So much to get through, but only one place to start, and that is at Old Trafford and the Sunday Times, where there was red relief for Manchester United and Ruben Amorim. Mark, you were at that game yesterday. Crazy game, wasn't it? But could the manner of that win and perhaps the fight that Manchester United's players seemed to show be, I know we've heard this before, be the turning point for United and Amorim?
It could be quite galvanising. I think, obviously, the result is the most important thing. They got 3 points in the top half of the table now, which makes a difference, just changes the mood a little bit. They've got a couple of games which they'd expect to win coming up, Brentford away, Sunderland at home. So this may be the start of things, but I know we've been talking prior to this that it always feels like the start of something for Man United, but it never quite is. But yesterday, you're right about the tenacity the players showed. I mean, Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, Matthias de Ligt in particular, there were some real battles on the pitch. I mean, Luke Shaw and Enzo Fernandez were at it all through the game. And what that did, it got the supporters on the United side, as well as the performance, it showed the players actually cared. They were actually desperate to, get a tackle in. But they started well, which they haven't done enough recently. Started well, scored the goal. Obviously, the situation with the goalkeeper, the Chelsea keeper, helped. But it did end a little bit nervously. But they got the result, they got a positive outcome, and that's what they've got to build on now, because it's been way too negative so far this season.
Go on, Craig.
So you said there, Mark, we were talking beforehand, that was quite measured compared to what you said off there. But the problem Manchester United have got, and it's a nice problem to have, I suppose, in a way, is that they'll always have enough good players to keep bad managers in a job. And we've seen that for 12 years now, post Sir Alex Ferguson. They have got good players, of course they have. It's Manchester United. They've actually bought quite well in the summer with Mbeumo and Cunha in particular, and we saw the impact Mbeumo had last night. But you look at Amorim, and yes, in the isolation of last night, it did feel as if the players were fighting for the badge, and by extension, you could say fighting for the manager too. But I think we're just delaying the inevitable. And you go back to his pre-match comments, and listen, as journalists, we're not going to do down quotes like, not even the Pope will change me. That's wonderful. But the more you listen to this guy, the more it just doesn't feel right. And he's absolutely wedded to a system now. Now, being wedded to a system and having beliefs, there's nothing wrong with that. We've seen Pep Guardiola, Eddie Howe, Jurgen Klopp and others, but those guys are wedded to winning formulas, winning strategies. This guy is wedded to one that doesn't work, and he will not change. And yes, while yesterday was a good victory, and we touched on there the fighting for each other, but I honestly think with Ruben Amorim now, it's keeping a bad manager in a job. And there's a big enough body of evidence now. We're approaching a year in November. Going into this weekend, it was 31 points from 31 games. They were 17th out of 17 teams who've been in the league in that time. That, for me, tells you he's not the right man.
John, what Craig is saying there leads me nicely to a piece in The Observer from Rory Smith. Ailing United need a plan and the nerve to see it through, just like Liverpool. And Craig was mentioning that formation. Rory says it is now a weekly ritual that Amorim appears in front of the mass ranks of the media and is asked several times in severally subtle but significantly different ways if he might like to change his system. He's starting to get creative with his answers. He's often quite funny, as though he recognises the absurdity of the situation. On Friday, he managed to crowbar in a mention of the Pope. Now, Craig mentioned the formation and how he is so wedded to it. Are we making too much about how he's wedded to the formation? Because we shouldn't forget that under Erik ten Hag, they were playing a back four and they weren't playing very well then either.
We're not making too much of it, because I think it highlights Amorim's inflexibility and basically his unwillingness to change. Honestly, it's ridiculous. He has got a squad which, in my view, is made for a 4-2-3-1 system. He's got a proper selection of players there that would fit it in. And by the way, that system would then accommodate Bruno Fernandes. What you are doing with his back three system is alienating your best player, Bruno Fernandes, who I have to say played well yesterday. Why? Because basically at times, for the majority of the game, kind of United were, well, it certainly felt like it, that basically up against 10 men and, they had a bit more freedom. It was a chaotic game, wasn't it? It was absolutely madness at times. But then actually we saw Bruno Fernandes in the game. Whereas so many games this season, it's felt like Fernandes has got lost. The system's not working. Honestly, players make systems, not vice versa. It's ridiculous. And it's almost tiresome, and it has become almost boring about it. And I think it's a concern. I do like Amorim. I want him to succeed. You know, he is kind of, you can't help but like the guy. He sort of stands in front of the cameras and basically he's quite, you know, inventive and sort of different. But it's just, I don't know that it's going to work. And there's me, and I was thinking at the start of the season, I really thought United would have a good season this season because of their recruitment. I like the front three that they've got. They've obviously yet to really kind of flourish together as a trio, and it's not working. There's a couple of things that really struck me yesterday. Harry Maguire, I thought he had such an important game. So important to United from a leadership point of view. They're lacking leadership on the pitch. I thought they looked so much better when he was on the pitch. And then, you know, the last 20 minutes, he's off the pitch and it's all falling apart. And I honestly think if Chelsea had scored 20, 15 minutes earlier than they did, they would have won the game.
I mean, that's a good point, actually, because there's a trend there for Amorim taking his centre-half off late in the game, whether they're winning, losing or drawing. And I'm conscious of the fact that they won yesterday, so I know we're going to be accused of being negative here, but we're trying to be constructive. But taking off his centre-half, who's been, like I say, dominant throughout the game, and replacing him with a good centre-half in Lenny Yoro, but it's kind of hard for centre-halves to come into the game, isn't it, late on? And you take Maguire off and you're right, Chelsea equalise with a cross to the far post, Trevor Chalobah heads it in. Harry Maguire on the pitch, that's probably not going to go in, is it? So I don't understand Amorim's tactics at times, his approach to games, and it's kind of a reckless approach at times, because if you're taking your centre-half off, you're making these kind of preordained changes every week, your centre-half's coming off, it gives the opposition hope, doesn't it? That, oh, well, just give it 70 minutes, you'll take your centre-half off, or you'll take that player off. And that is the issue with Amorim, that his tactical approach is just very questionable for me, and the results bear that out. As Craig said, you know, over the course of his time at United, 10 months, I mean, prior to yesterday, no other manager or coach had a worse record. That says it all.
Craig, you mentioned delaying the inevitable. John said that the squad is made for four at the back and a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, however you want to do that formation. But the fact of the matter is they employed Ruben Amorim because he was successful. And the reason he was successful at Sporting was because of this 3-4-2-1 formation. So do you either stick with that, and asking him to change is asking him to do something that he hasn't been successful or hasn't done before?
Well, what is as the ownership, and this does come back to the ownership, as you quite rightly say, they put him in there knowing that he was a manager who arrived with a philosophy that he is quite clearly going to stick to. What's the bigger call as the ownership? Is it to give this guy time, and he's only had 10 months, or is it to realise that it isn't working and to make change now? Because there's an argument to say he walked into a difficult situation. Now, if I was a manager, I would want to inherit a team in a squad in a situation from Erik ten Hag, because there are so many easy wins to be had. And Amorim, this is quite an achievement. Amorim on the back of Ten Hag has statistically made Manchester United worse. You know, over the course of the 10 months, there's a feeling they might give it until November to give it the full 12 before they do make change. But I really do think change is down the track, and it will be the right call.
Do you agree with that? Do you see Amorim as the long-term answer, and do you think he will be given that time?
I don't think he's the answer, but I think he'll be given more time than he probably merits. I think because United they're desperate for him to work out, because one, they've made so many mistakes over the past, and two, it's the new hierarchy that appointed Ruben Amorim, so there's a lot of kind of reputational at stake here. You know, Omar Barada brought him in, Jason Wilcox has backed him with his transfers in the summer, so United need it to work. But Craig's right, you know, there are two ways to go. You can either back the guy and it's going to fail anyway, or you can just make a change now. I don't think United are in that position yet. I think even if they lost at Brentford at the weekend, or had they lost yesterday, I don't think they're quite there yet. I don't think they're anywhere near there, to be fair. I think they want it to work. I think they feel that they're seeing signs of progress. You know, they'll tell you about all these stats that United are top of this, the top of that, but ultimately they're not winning games until yesterday. So what happens next? We've seen it all before. We could argue that David Moyes, Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Erik ten Hag were all kept beyond when it was obvious that they weren't going to work. At the moment with Amorim, I think people like us are saying that it's not going to work, but within the club, they're looking at the positives, thinking it might work. But we've seen it all before with different managers, different clubs. When it's not working, if it's not worked after 10 months, is it going to work?
They seem to be as if they're trying to convince themselves, though, because, you know, you look in and you read the pieces written by you guys on the ground in Manchester, and you can tell when a piece has been briefed to a degree, you know, and there's noise around it, and there's, well, have you seen this number? Have you seen that trend? I think they're trying to convince themselves on the inside that it's going to work. But believe your eyes. I don't think it is.
I think also you've got to look at it and say, who's better out there? If you're going to make a change...
That's the thing, isn't it?
Who is better out there? And I just don't think sometimes when it's just so obvious and down the tracks. I mean, for example, when Jose came in, you know, it just felt it was inevitable that Jose would be the next manager for Manchester United. Do we feel that pathway is there for United at the moment? I mean, United is a global force. It's, you know, it's the self-styled, you know, in their own eyes, the biggest club in the world. They've not got European football this season. This is a chance, obviously, for Amorim then to impose his ideas and his, you know, his methods on the training ground, day in, day out. And I do feel as if you've got to give him time. And I think changing it at this stage, we also, by the way, we are talking on the back of a win at Old Trafford. So to be fair to him, he must think, blimey, I can't win, you know, with some of the criticism. But I do think we've been here so many times with United that you've got to have the right person to replace him. You've got to have an upgrade. I would love to know the kind of the ins and outs. And a few people have really sort of kind of have written illuminating pieces. But Amorim was, let's be clear here, he was lined up for Liverpool at one stage. And then basically, you know, why didn't that quite work out? Was that a sort of a coaching issue? Was that Liverpool could suddenly see that maybe if he's so wedded to back three, which has been suggested in several well-informed pieces, then he's not for us? And listen, the way it's then worked out for Liverpool and going on a slot, and basically Liverpool's recruitment and, you know, when I say recruitment, I mean hiring people in the top positions as well as signings, has been absolutely second to none in recent times. And their move for Arne Slot, the way that they have signed players, has elevated them and to a different level. They've done it relatively quickly. They've done it incredibly intelligently, and they are now the shining example across the Premier League, across to every other club, and dare I say it, across to Manchester United. That's the way it should be done.
Just on Amorim, I think what's worth mentioning as well, you look at the whole squad, how many of those players has he made better? I mean, I'll say Amad Diallo, because Ten Hag didn't want to know with Diallo, and Amorim's got more out of Amad. But beyond that, I can't point to any players that have actually improved under Amorim. I was saying before we came into Craig about Eddie Howe, the testament to Eddie Howe is that when he went to Newcastle, they were in a far worse position than Man United were when Amorim took over. And he transformed the club with players like Joe Linton, with Miguel Almiron, that everyone had written off. Yeah. And he's got them play. I mean, Joe Linton's been an amazing player for Newcastle under Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe made so many of those players better. And that's all you can ask for a manager or a coach, just make the players better individually. Yeah. And Amorim hasn't done that. He's actually made some players worse. But Cross is right, they won yesterday. It's positive times at Man United.
Mark's right. The ultimate test of a coach is how you coach, especially in the modern game where a lot of the other responsibilities are taken away from you. And to touch on the Eddie Howe example, there was not a player he has not made better within Newcastle United, taking 4 or 5 non-cap players, Dan Burn, Tino Livramento, Lewis Hall, Anthony Gordon, Joe Linton, turning them in to full internationals. And you look at what Amorim has done by contrast, and players do. And is this an Amorim thing, or is this a Manchester United thing? And I just want to talk quickly about Benjamin Sesko, a player who is coming in, who looks like the last place he needs to be right now is Manchester United. He's going to need time to. He's a young man, come from the Bundesliga, and there's some suggestion on the back of last night. You know, has he arrived now? What a 6'5" striker with one flick on. Are we seeing? You know, this is a corner turn.
To be fair,
it was a good flick on, but it was one he should have won. And Brian Mbeumo did the good work after that. But I looked at his stats this morning. Sesko, he had 8 touches, 3 completed passes, and 1 touch in the penalty area. He looks like a player right now who wants the ground to swallow him up. And when you're playing like that, Manchester United is not the place to be. Yeah. Look at Grimsby. He took the 10th penalty out of 10 at Grimsby. That, for me, was so informative as to where he's at.